I'm going to use this so I'm not yelling at you. They're making little stamps that have the Museum of Glass logo on them. So that is the little pieces of glass. They're pushing the stamp onto it, and it stamps the signature on there. Yeah, that furnace holds about 1,000 pounds of molten glass inside it. It's just a big bowl called a crucible, and the glass sits in there at 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. So it looks like a big salad bowl full of honey, but it's molten glass. It's clear glass, but because of the temperature, it looks orange. But that's just because of how hot it is. When it cools down, it's clear glass. Yeah, so they just put a little piece of it on the table, squish the stamp onto it, and it makes little stamps. No, gloves get in the way of your dexterity more than they help. They're all wearing safety glasses, though. That's what matters. Oh, yeah, there's a better view up there if you want to really see what they're doing. They're squishing the stamp on there. It's a little logo like of the cone that says Museum of Glass around it. So they're making a bunch of those while they wait for the rest of the team to get out here to make the real stuff. I don't know if you guys heard me explaining to them a second ago what's going on. They're making little stamps right now. So they're getting glass out of the furnace, and that handle there has a little stamp on it that has like the cone, and it says Museum of Glass on it. So they're making little stamps while we're waiting for the rest of the team. And then once everyone's out here, they'll start making more stuff. But yeah, the glass in the furnace is all clear. So it looks orange because of how hot it is, but it's clear glass. It sits in the furnace at about 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. So it looks orange, but that's just because of how hot it is. It's like a big bowl inside there. Our furnace holds about 1,000 pounds of molten glass in it. So they're just scooping little bits of it out at a time, putting it on the table and stamping it. You can see it up there a little better, kind of the view of what they're doing. When glass is molten, it's squishy, so you can stamp it, or you can stretch it or cut it or pull it. So little stamps. And then they're putting it over there in that big box. That's called the annealing oven. It's going to cool the glass down slowly so that it doesn't crack from thermal stress. If glass gets too cold too fast, it'll break. So it has to cool slowly inside an oven. It'll sit in the oven at 950 degrees. And that's a resting temperature for the glass. They'll sit in there overnight and cool down slowly. Yeah, 950 degrees, the glass is hot enough that it's not going to break, but it's cold enough that it's not going to change shape. So it's all just sitting in there. And at the end of the day, they'll turn on the program that will systematically cool it down. So the computer lowers the temperature systematically. That way the glass cools at an even rate. Yeah. So the question was, what's glass made of? It's made mostly from silica, but then there's soda ash and limestone. All of that melts or lowers the melting temperature, makes it non-water soluble, makes it easier to work with. But it's like mostly silica. Yeah. It's all pure glass, yeah. There's something called the coefficient of expansion that makes different types of glass not compatible. So it all has to be the same coefficient of expansion. So if we threw a recycled bottle in there, it might not be the same, so it wouldn't be compatible. So we get all the same glass and put it in there. Yeah. I think the coefficient of expansion for this glass is 96. Yeah. We're going to make a pitcher. Yay. So our team's going to get set up to make a pitcher. So there'll be a little more glass blowing happening in just a second. Glass blowing is like a team sport. There's a lot of communication that has to happen for things to happen. So they're strategizing to know who's going to do what part and how it's going to work. They're getting it all ready, and we'll start pretty soon. So the team's just getting started here. They got what's called a gather of glass out of the furnace. When you get a gather, it's like scooping honey out of a jar. So they got a scoop of glass out of the furnace. They got a bubble started in it, and they're going to start blowing and shaping the bubble. They're going to make a pitcher. This big barrel of fire that they're using, there's one right here and one on that side. Those are called reheating chambers or glory holes. They sit at about the same temperature as the inside of the furnace. They're run on natural gas and forced air. And they're for reheating the glass. As the glass gets colder, it gets stiffer, so you have to reheat it. They use that to get the glass hot again. But Gabe is sitting at the bench, shaping up the bubble and the glass around it. I think he's going to go back into the furnace and get more glass. So Gabe just put the piece into what's called an optic mold. The optic mold stamps a pattern on the outside of the glass. He used what's called the diamond facet mold. So this is going to look like it has little diamond patterns all over it, like a texture. You can't really see it very well right now because they haven't blown the piece out very much. It's all very condensed. But there's a mold that's on the ground over there. You put the glass in the mold and blow the bubble. It pushes it out into the side walls of the mold, which has those stamp things that stamps the pattern on them. Yeah, you could see it a little better there. Oh, you're gathering over it. Nice. So when he gathers glass over that, all those little divots are going to trap bubbles, and it'll have a bubble pattern all the way around it. When they blow that out, it'll stretch, and those bubbles will stay in there. So he's just waiting for that to get colder so he can put it back in the furnace and get more glass. Cold in glass blowing just means not molten, so when it's cold, it's about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Relative term. If it gets much colder than that, it'll crack. So it's kind of a balance, learning the temperatures by feel. But now you can see all those little textures trapped a bubble in there. It's got a bubble pattern all the way around it. That big wet wooden spoon that Gabe just used is called a block. It helps equalize the temperature and get it all symmetrical. It lives in a bucket of water behind the bench so that they're always wet. And this other tool that Gabe has that he's about to use, Gabe is the one at the bench with the black hat on. Sorry, I didn't even say who was who. Yeah, Gabe is about to use this pad that he just dipped in that water. That is just folded up newspaper soaked in water. A wet pad of newspaper. You can shape glass with that. Similar to the blocks, it's soaked in water, so it creates steam when it touches the glass. You can see the steam coming off of it, and that helps the tool last longer and make it not hot in your hand. If it gets too dry, it starts to burn little pieces off onto the surface of the glass, and those are pretty hard to get off. Same thing with the block. Soaked in water so that it helps shape the glass a little better without burning the wood too much. But now you can see how this is like a team effort. We've got Gabe at the bench. He's having Nick blow into the pipe. And we've got Alex also assisting them. Gabe's telling Nick when to blow and when to stop, shaping the glass as it's expanding. You can see the little bubble pattern in there a lot more too. The tool that Gabe is about to use is called a pair of jacks. He's going to use those to carve into the glass. We've got to get a way to get this piece off the blowpipe, so we're going to carve in a line that will act as a score mark to be able to snap it off the pipe later. So when the glass is hot, you can carve into it with this tool called the jacks to create the jack line, which is what we're doing now. Right off the head of the pipe, that line is the top of the piece. The part farthest from the pipe will be the bottom of the pitcher. I forgot what it was called for a second. So they really go back and forth between the bench and the reheating chamber. As we work on the glass, it gets colder, it gets stiffer. You have to reheat it so that you can continue working on it until it gets colder and stiffer, back and forth. So now this is really starting to take shape. You can see that bubble a little more, or the little bubbles a little better. And the bubble, the main large bubble that we're blowing right now will be the inside of the pitcher. Alex is putting beeswax on the blades of the jacks. That makes them slippery so that they're easier to use. Beeswax is flammable though, so if flames go off that tool, it's the beeswax burning off. So Alex might be blocking your view a little bit, but he's using those paddles to shield Gabe's hand from the radiating heat coming off the glass. And you can see the beeswax and the fire from the drywood paddles. But they're flattening the bottom of the piece, so it has a way to sit on the table. And now they're done with the bottom, so they need to work on the top of it. They've got to take it off the blowpipe. So they're going to do what's called a punty transfer. The punty is just the rod we're going to transfer it onto. And Ben over there in the long sleeve shirt, he has the punty. He's going to get a small amount of glass on the end of it and shape it up into a specific way so that we can attach it to the bottom of the vase, or of the piece. Hot glass will stick to other hot glass. So the temperature and timing of this is what's most important. They're going to line up their temperature and timing so that they can meet at the middle bench and attach the two rods together. So Ben over there, you might not be able to see him because it's behind this big silver box, but he's getting the punty ready so that they can transfer the piece off the blowpipe and onto the transfer rod, the punty. The reason we're doing that is because we want to work on the top of the piece, but the top of it is what's holding it onto the blowpipe. So we have to take it off the blowpipe so that we can work on the top. Hi. I didn't realize you guys were over here. I was looking at everyone over here. If anyone has questions at any time, just let me know. I'll come over here. But we're about to do our transfer. Doing this is going to flip the piece around 180 degrees so that they can work on the top while it's connected at the bottom instead of the other way around. So they're working on lining up the temperature and timing for this to work. The temperature and timing is really important because if the punty rod is too cold, it won't stay attached. So it has to be the right temperature. That way the piece will stay on there. To break it off the blowpipe, they put water on the jack line, and that cracked the glass. Because at the right temperature, if you put water on the glass, it creates cracks. It made a weak spot. They tapped on the blowpipe, and those vibrations went into the weak spot and removed it from the pipe. So now they've flipped it around. That bubble we were blowing is the inside of the piece. They're going to open the top of it and add some things to the piece to make it a pitcher. And we're just working with clear glass today, so there's no color on this one right now. I don't know if it's only clear glass today or if they're going to add colors to later pieces, but right now it's just clear glass. When glass is molten, you can cut through it with scissors. So that's what Gabe just did. He trimmed off the excess part of the glass where it broke off the pipe so that it's a little cleaner up there. Where it broke off the pipe, it just broke kind of randomly and jagged. So we cleaned that part up, and now the lip of it will look a little bit cleaner, a little nicer, instead of just broken, lumpy glass. That part's tricky, though, because as the glass gets colder, it gets stiffer. So he made it look simple, but cutting through hot glass is a pretty hard technical thing to do. And now they're just going to work on the top of the shape. So here, Gabe's left arm is really doing most of the work. He's rotating the pipe. That torch is called a fluffy torch because the flame is fluffy. It helps heat up the colder parts of the glass. So he was fluffy torching the bottom half of the piece. The top of it is the first thing in the fire and the last thing out, so it gets hotter. Using that fluffy torch equalizes the temperature of the whole thing so it doesn't crack on the bottom from getting too cold. Okay, on this side of the studio, Ben is getting a bubble ready to attach as the handle. So he blew a bubble into the glass. He'll bring it to Gabe, and they'll attach it, stretch it, and then wrap it around to make the handle on our pitcher. So the screen has a really good view of what's going on if you can't really see it. But they're attaching that on there, stretching it. They'll use that tool to cut it, And then when the glass is hot, he can grab it and stretch it, wrap it around, and form the handle. He's kind of shaping it with a copper rod. And now our pitcher has a handle on it. They're all making this look really easy, but sculpting moving glass can be kind of difficult. Here, Gabe is using a torch to help melt the handle onto the piece. That just helps really seal those two bits of glass together. That torch is hotter than the fluffy torch and a finer point, so it serves a different purpose than the fluffy torch. That's going to superheat specific parts of the glass. So they're getting the edge of it hot enough that he can bend it to make the little spout for our pitcher. So he's just going to go in there with the tool and give it a little spout. And now we have a pitcher. Yeah. To get it off the punty, they'll do it the same way they got it off the blowpipe. They're going to shock the connection with a drop of water at the right temperature and break it off. They'll clean up the bottom where it breaks. And they're going to put it into this big black box over here. It's called the annealing oven. So they're getting it ready to remove from the punty. I don't want to try to talk over that torch, so I'll just wait till they're done. But they're going to take it off and load it into the annealing oven over there. If the glass cools too quickly, it will crack, so it has to go into a controlled area to cool down slowly. That process is called annealing. So it'll go in the annealing oven and stay in there overnight, cooling down systematically until it's cold enough that we can take it out with our hands. But it's about 950 degrees right now. It doesn't look very hot, but it's still hot enough that it would burn you if you touch it. So they're going to load it away with these tongs, break it off the punty, clean up the bottom where the punty broke off, and Alex is going to grab it and put it into our annealing oven, and it'll just take a little nap overnight in there, cooling down slowly. And we have a pitcher. Let's give these guys a hand for a nice little piece. Go team. So everything else we make today is going to go in there, and it's all going to sit in there at about the same temperature as that piece. At the end of the day is when they'll run the program that will systematically cool it down overnight. So everything will be in there until sometime tomorrow, and eventually we can take it out. But yeah, every piece of glass has to go through that annealing process, or it gets too cold too quickly and it breaks. Yeah. So we finished that piece. Let's see what they make next. Most of the tools they're using are made of metal, and they do get really hot, but you grab them by the handle so that you don't grab the hot part. So the heat doesn't travel up into the parts that you're holding. And same thing for blowpipes and the pipes they're using. It only gets hot as far as you put it into the fire, so they don't touch the hot parts. It's kind of like working in the kitchen. You touch the handle of the pan, not the hot part. But yeah, all the tools have very specific parts that you're supposed to hold on to. Like I'll show you the jacks. This is one of the oldest glass blowing tools. The blades of these are the part that get hot, and then also the straps of the jacks. The flat part up at the top. So the handles are in the middle. You always want to grab these here. It's just stainless steel metal. Yeah. But the blades get really hot, so you never want to touch the blades. I'm going to put these back before they think I stole them. Yeah, and then the rest of the tools they have are they have very distinct handles. If you touch something hot, you're going to learn pretty fast what not to touch. Looks like we're about to do something called a color overlay. So they're going to add color to this piece. For glass color, we don't make the color, but there's chemists that will mix different metal oxides into clear glass and make rods of it. So this is orange glass. I don't know what metal oxide makes this color, but we go to the glass color and supply store and we buy it. So we buy rods of color like this, and then you take this and put it into a little box that brings it up to temperature. If it's too cold and you put it in the fire, it will explode from thermal shock. So you have to preheat it a little bit. So we have chunks of color preheating in a little black box on that side of the stage. You get a little bit of clear glass on the end of the stick, and then you use that to pick it up, take it out of the box. They're going to do what's called a color overlay, which means they're going to lay the color over a bubble of glass, and that will give us a layer of color. Could we play the color overlay video, please? So this will kind of
The color in glass comes from adding various materials to the mixture of raw ingredients called batch. Most of the colorants are compounds containing some kind of metal. For example, adding cobalt to clear glass creates a deep blue. Tin and antimony can be used to create white glass, and gold chloride can produce a rich red or pink colored glass. Colored glass is melted in furnaces, just like clear glass, and then is usually rolled into bars for storage and easy application. In order to apply color bar to a bubble, we first need to preheat the color to approximately 950 or 1000 degrees Fahrenheit in a color oven or garage. Once warm, the color is then picked up on the end of a punty rod using a little bit of clear glass as a support. The color is then heated in the 2300 degree glory hole to soften it and make it malleable, while another artist creates a small bubble of clear glass on a blowpipe. Once warm, the color is dropped over the clear bubble, and then using a variety of hand tools or the steel marver, the color is rolled back over the clear in an even layer. This process is called dropping color, or creating a color overlay. Depending on the project, that bubble is then usually gathered over with clear glass and blown into the final form. The finished product may appear to be all made from colored glass, but when viewed in cross-section, we can see that there is only a thin layer of color sandwiched between many layers of clear glass.
Yeah, that's what they're doing right now is a color overlay. I don't know if you can see it very well over there on this side of the studio, but the screen kind of shows you a little better view. Alex has got the color overlay and he's shaping it up. They're going to gather more clear glass over that again and blow it out, similar to the video. And that'll make a solid color on our piece. So Alex just gathered more clear glass over our color overlay. No matter what color it is, when it's hot, it's all gonna look orange. So when it cools, it'll be, I don't know what color it is, but it looks orange right now. Oh, they're cutting pieces of it off because when you gather out of the furnace, you might pick up some bubbles. So they're cutting out the little bubbles that are on the surface of the glass. It just makes it look a little bit cleaner instead of having bubbles all over it. So he was just cutting out the bubbles while the glass was hot and then reshaping it so that it only has the one bubble that we want to blow. So Ben over here just has a solid rod of glass. He's building up the amount of glass by building it up in layers, Glass blowing is really a layering process. So there's not a bubble in this one, but he's building up the layers of mass to get a lot of glass on there. Right now, Ben is using what's called the pipe cooler. It's like a water fountain. You can put the pipe in and it cools it down so you can hold it up higher. When you put the rod in the furnace to get glass out, it's really hot, so it heats up the rod. So if you rinse the rod in water, it makes it colder where you can hold it up higher without it being so hot on your hand. So we've got a pipe cooler on that side of the studio and then another one over here. It just looks like a water fountain. You put the rod in and it cools it down. Okay, now I know what Ben is doing. So there's an event called the Concert at the Cone that happens here. And what's that? Oh, Breakfast at the Cone. Sorry, not concert. Breakfast at the Cone. It's a big fundraiser they do every year. They asked last second if we could make them a award. So we're practicing the sculpted part of it that he wants to make. He's practicing it in clear because clear glass you can throw back in the furnace if you mess up or you don't like what you made, and you don't lose any color. So he's practicing it in clear before they make one out of color. We've got some stuff over here. This is called the Marver. It's a big metal table that you can roll the glass on to cool it and shape it. We've got some things over here that they're going to push. Whoops. They're going to put them on top of it, and it's going to stamp that pattern in there. So he's getting it hot enough to push it onto those to practice making that shape and clear. The team on the left side of the studio, they're making what's called a stuff cup. So we did our color overlay. We've got a layer of color sandwiched between two layers of clear. They blew it out into kind of a cup shape. And it's called a stuff cup because you can take the cup and put it on a little ring on the ground and then take clear glass and stuff it inside of it. And that fills the inside of the cup so that you have solid clear glass inside of that layer of color. And then you can later sculpt that into something. So they're practicing making these awards in clear, and they're getting those ready to make the actual awards with color on them. So multiple things are happening right now. The stuff cup they just transferred to the punty rod so that they can open the top of it and make it shaped like a cup. The bottom of it isn't flat like a cup though, it's like a round part that they'll put into the little saucer on the ground so they can stuff clear glass into it. These guys are going to transfer this piece onto another rod, similar to how we did the picture earlier. They're going to break it off the rod in Ben's left hand by attaching it to the rod that Gabe has on the right. This big silver box over here is called the garage. So Alex just finished making the stuff cup, and he's parking the piece in the garage to keep it hot so that when we're ready to use it, we can take it out and it'll still be hot enough that it's not going to break. So the garage sits around 1,000 degrees, maybe a little more depending on how hot they want it to be. You can have it be different temperatures, but usually it's around 1,000 degrees. You put pieces in there. An example is like if you're making a sculpture, if you're making a little animal, you can make the legs and put the legs in there, and then you make the body, and you get the legs out one at a time and attach them to the piece. And that just keeps them hot so they don't break, so that you can work on something else while it's in there. So they've got the stuff cup in there waiting for whenever they're ready to use it. The garage on this side that you can't see has like little doors that you can open and put things inside it. So they've got the stuff cup in there on the end of the stick, sitting inside the garage, staying hot. And Ben and Gabe just transferred this piece to flip it around. So they'll clean up the side that just broke, and then they'll try out the mold they want to stamp onto it to make the little rewards, or awards. Right now we're just waiting for the glass to heat up. Sometimes it takes a minute. They got the surface of this really hot so they could push it onto this little mold they have on the Marver over here, the table. It's going to stamp that texture on there. So when he takes it off, it'll have some texture on the face of it where he's pushing it on there right now. And they're just practicing in clear before they make it out of color. So this is our test piece to see how it looks. Now it's got that pattern stamped on there. You got a nice texture, a little design on the surface. What is it, a belt buckle? So a lot of glass blowing is trial and error process, experimenting to see if you like how it looks. So that's really what we're doing right now. We're doing a trial and error experimental test right now to see what kind of shape, color, design they want to make these pieces. So they're going to put this piece into what's called the annealing oven. The glass has to cool down slowly or it breaks, so it'll cool down slowly inside that controlled atmosphere. It's 950 degrees inside that box. And at the end of the day, they'll turn on a program that will systematically lower the temperature over time so that the glass can cool evenly and not break. So that was a little test run to try something out for a design. They're going to continue to work on those, tweaking the design a little bit. So the team is resetting and getting things set up to work on the next project. So they'll get started here shortly on another thing. Right now, they're just building up their material. So they're adding layers of clear glass on top of each other to get a bunch of it off the end of the stick. Our furnace right there that Alex just came out of, you just got some fresh molten glass there. In the furnace, it sits at about 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. It runs on natural gas and forced air inside the furnace. And that's what melts all of our glass for us. Have any of you seen glass blowing before? Nobody? Teacher's seen it. Couple people? Cool. What's that? It is very fun. Yeah, do you guys have questions?
No, they've seen the glass blow.
Okay.
I got 6 kids from last year.
Oh, cool.
Been here, so.
Awesome. Who's been here before? Cool. So you know everything already. Does anyone want to guess how hot the glass is sitting in the furnace? Yeah, what do you think? A little hotter than 1,000 degrees. What do you think?
1,350.
Getting closer is hotter. What do you think? A million, that's a little much. What do you think? What? Is that a number? Okay. Well, I'll tell you guys, it's about 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. Really, really hot. It's hotter than molten lava. This is clear glass. It just looks orange because of how hot it is. What's your question?
How do you get something that's hotter than molten lava?
You heat it up inside the furnace. The furnace runs on natural gas and forced air, and it just keeps the glass hot inside there. So the furnace melts the glass for us, and you scoop it out the same way you get honey out of a jar with a stick. You put the stick in there and you turn it, and the glass wraps around, and you get as much as you can. Yeah, what's your question?
How long would it take
To make one of these pieces, they just started this one like 10 minutes before you guys got here. What they're making right now are prototypes for some awards they're gonna make. There's a fundraiser that happens here every year called Breakfast at the Cone, so they're making awards for that fundraiser. And they're experimenting on what they want it to look like right now. With glass blowing and glass making, it's a lot of trial and error and experimentation. So that's what we're doing today, trying out stuff to see what they like the best. Yeah. What's your question? Why does a building need to be so tall? It's shaped like a cone. It's the cone. It doesn't have to be that tall, but they designed the building to be a cone. That's for decoration. Yeah, what's your question?
How does the metal that's holding the glass not burn?
So the metal that they're using on those pipes has a much higher melting temperature than the glass. So they have to get a lot hotter to melt. They also are, the metal is, it's only gonna get hot as far as you put it in the fire. So the part closest to the glass is gonna be really hot, but they can hold on to the part that they're touching. It gets hot closer to the glass. Yeah. What's your question? How are they not getting burned? By working carefully and experience. You can get burned doing this if you don't know what you're doing, but these guys have been doing it for a long time. What's your question up there? Yeah. How do they make it into a like a sculpture like those up there? When the glass is hot, it's molten, so it's like stretchy and malleable. You can pull on it and stretch it and cut it and twist it and all kinds of stuff. It's like Play-Doh, but really hot. It's really hot Play-Doh. You can play with it and move it around and sculpt it. Yeah. You had a question up there? Yeah. How did each of these guys, I don't know specifically how they got into glass blowing, but I found it when I was in college. I learned how to blow glass in college. But you can find it from working at a factory. They'll pay you to learn how, or you can learn how at a studio that teaches classes. There's lots of different ways you can get into it, especially in this area. It's all over the place. Yeah. What's your question?
Why are they making it into like a cloud shape?
They're making it into kind of like a saucer shape because they're going to put a design on the surface of it. Yeah. They're shaping it up so that they've got a mold over here on that table. They're going to push the glass onto the mold and it'll stamp a texture onto it. Yeah. What's that? Yeah. They're just using a dry wood paddle on it right now, so the wood catches on fire. But that's clear glass. It's just really hot, so it doesn't look very clear. Right now, it's still probably around over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. To make glass, that's a good question. So what glass is made of is soda ash, silica, and limestone. It's minerals you can get from the earth. So material scientists will mine the earth for those minerals. You crush it into a powder, and you put it into the furnace and turn it up really hot, and it melts and it creates glass. It's mostly silica, which is... Yeah, so sand has silica in it, and that's how we discovered how to make glass. We don't know exactly how it got discovered, but the silica in sand. Yeah, you can melt sand into glass, but it won't be very clean. It'll be kind of muddy looking. It won't be clear glass. Are you raising your hand over here? Yeah. What's your question? What's the process of what? Blowing glass? To make the glass, they take all the raw material and they put it in the furnace and it melts. That's called charging. So they're going to charge the furnace at night. Everything in there, it's soda ash, silica, and limestone crushed into a powder. You turn up the furnace and it melts all of that into glass, and then the next day you come in and you can take it out and it looks like that. Yeah, what's your question? What's that? Where's the Museum of Glass what? Oh, when was it built? Like 20 years ago, I think. I don't remember the year that it was built. Not very long ago. Yeah. So that's called a fluffy torch. because the flame is fluffy. It's still about 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit, though. They're using that to heat up the part of the glass that's closest to the stick. The metal takes a lot of the heat out of the glass. What's your question? How old is glass blowing? It's very old, hundreds of years old. To cool the glass down, that's a good question. We use what's called the annealing oven, which is that big black box over there. The glass has to cool down slowly, or it breaks from what's called thermal shock. If glass changes temperature too quickly, it breaks. So it has to cool slowly inside that box. There's a temperature, or a computer that manages the temperature, and it slowly cools it down overnight. Yeah. So everything we make today is going to go in that box. We'll run the program at the end of the day that will cool it down. Tomorrow morning they can take everything out, and it'll be cold. Yeah, what's your question? What's that?
How do they survive?
How do the pieces make it?
How do they survive?
How do things survive? I'm not sure how to answer that question. So we anneal the glass. That's how it makes it in one piece. You have to cool it down slowly or it breaks. How do the people survive? They work very carefully. It is inherently dangerous to do this. It's hot. So you just have to make sure you pay attention to what you're doing. Don't touch the hot thing. They don't wear gloves because gloves get in the way of what you need to do with your hands. It would be like trying to play guitar with gloves on. They would be more in the way than helpful. Yeah. What's your question?
How long would it take
To fully cool the glass down depends on how thick it is. The thicker it is, the longer that annealing process is. So these pieces will probably cool over like a day. We'll probably take them out tomorrow afternoon, not in the morning, because these are pretty thick. The thicker it is, the longer it needs to cool because the more of the glass has to cool down. Yeah. Yeah, what's your question? To heat up the glass, it depends on, similar to how long it takes to cool down. The thicker it is, the longer it takes for it to get hot. But to melt all the glass in the furnace, it's called charging. You add the raw material into the furnace and it melts overnight, maybe longer than a overnight period. That's why there's two furnaces, because we use that one while that one's melting, and then you switch. Yeah. What's your question? Yeah. So the furnace and the reheating chambers, or the glory holes, those are natural gas and forced air. And then these are propane and oxygen. So we've got our propane and oxygen hooked up to this big red box. So the torches they're using are propane and oxygen, but the larger machines are natural gas and forced air. And the glory hole is called that because that's just what they named it. I don't really know exactly why they named it that, but that's why it's called that. Yeah, it's just a big barrel of fire. We call it the reheating chamber too, because it's used for reheating the glass. If you tried to cook a pizza in there, it would be thin and crispy. It's really hot, so it would just burn it up. If you put it in there for 1 second, it would be crispy on the outside and uncooked on the inside, probably. It's about 2,200 degrees in there. Yeah, what's your question? Same thing, they would just burn up immediately. It's really hot. You could turn it off, let it cool down, and then try to make something in there. Yeah, what's your question? How long does it take the glass to cool down? It depends on how thick it is. The thicker it is, the longer it needs to cool. This piece will probably be cooling down for about a day. Yeah. If you didn't put the piece in the annealer, it would break within a couple of minutes. If glass cools too quickly, it goes through what's called thermal shock, and that cracks the glass. Yeah, what's your question? You're inside the cone. Did you see the big silver cone when you were outside?
Oh yeah.
That's where we are. We're inside the big cone. Here, I'm going to come over here. What's your question? How long does it what? How long does it take to make one piece is depending on what you're making. Some things can be more intricate and take longer. These pieces, they're trying to make a really specific thing that they haven't made very much of, so it's taking longer because they're trying to figure out the best way to do it. And they're using clear glass because clear glass you can recycle. You can put it back in the furnace. So if this piece, they make it, they decide they don't like it, they can put it back in the furnace and use the glass again for something else. What's your question? That thing that says 1976 it was somebody's birthday last week, so they celebrated their birthday. There was a guy in here named Sam who was doing a residency, and he turned 50 during one of the days of his residency, so they celebrated his birthday. Yeah. Do you have a question? Sorry. If you stuck your hand in there, you would lose skin and it would hurt very bad. It would burn your hand. Yeah, it would, 3rd-degree burn, hospital trip. What's your question? The annealer? Yeah. If the glass is really thick, it might chip on the surface, but if it's something like a cup and you drop it, it would probably break. Because this is concrete, so it would probably break. Yeah, what's your question? If you drop molten glass, it's hot enough that it's like a liquid, so it would just like splat on the ground and make a puddle. That's pretty crazy. Yeah. We don't actually know who invented glass blowing. It kind of was, through time, it just changed a little by little. And the Italians are the ones that really mastered it and created a lot of the techniques that we use. But we don't really know who discovered or created glass blowing. It's a really long history. What's your question? If the glass is molten on the ground, it won't burn through the concrete, but it might create like a little spot where you can see where it was. It wouldn't burn through it, but it would leave a mark, probably. Yeah.
What if you shove the molten glass into the furnace?
The furnace is where we have all the glass sitting in it. It sits in a big bowl that looks like a giant salad bowl. What do you mean? If you put all the glass in the furnace?
What if you shove the glass into the furnace?
If you put glass in the furnace, it'll melt because it's really hot in there.
Shove it.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Really fast. What happens?
If you push it in there, put it in there really fast and it's cold, it'll explode from thermal shock. If you take a cold piece of glass and try to put it into that really high temperature, it would explode. It would break from the thermal shock. We can't show you that. It's dangerous. I don't think they want to do that either. They worked really hard on this. Yeah, what's your question? I'm not sure what those are for. I think that was to keep track of something they were making the other day and how many they made. What's your question? Yeah, so our team here, the one sitting at the bench, his name is Ben. The one over here with the black hat, his name is Gabe. And the one with the tie-dye shirt is Alex. So that's our team today, Ben, Gabe, and Alex. So the reason he just put a bunch of water on the glass is because he tried to stamp the pattern from the metal on it, and the metal got stuck. If metal gets hot, it sticks to the glass. So they don't want that to be stuck on there. They're trying to get it off. If you spray water on the glass, it gets really cold. So he's spraying water on it to try to get it to break. He broke it off the pipe. That glass is going to get too cold too quickly, and it's going to break into pieces, and then we can take the metal pieces off of it. So we just have to wait for that to break. So you wanted to see what would happen to a piece of glass if it got too cold too quickly. Watch that. Eventually, it's just going to go poof. Not like violently, but it's going to break. Yeah, what's your question? Oh, this big silver box is called a garage. When you make, if you're making, an example is like if you're making a sculpture of an animal, you can make the legs and put them in there, and that keeps the pieces hot so that they don't break. So if you don't want to take it off the stick and put it into the annealer, you can park it in the garage and then take it back out later when you're ready to add the leg to the body of the animal. So they've got some stuff in there that they're saving for later when they're ready to move on to the next step of the process. Right now, they're just kind of experimenting with these metal rods and these little metal hoops to try to make some sculptures. Yeah, what's your question up there? Oh, the sculptures out there. The artist, Paul Stankard. We have a video that can explain how they do that, actually, if you'd want to see the video. Let me see if we can play the Paul Stankard video up there. Do we have that available to play on the screen, please? We'll see if he has it.
And the narrowest hinge of my hand puts to scorn all machinery. This sentence is from one of Walt Whitman's most respected poems, Song of Myself. I'm Paul Stankard. I'd like to share with you the process and techniques that I have both perfected and developed. These techniques have enabled me to create this glass orb that I have titled Orchid Bouquet Cluster. The process that I use to create my botanical art, it's called flame working. And here I'm taking commercially available colored glasses, melting them into what I call material preparation. Here I'm making the green glass rods to press out leaves for the design. When I'm focusing on a blossom, I take advantage of colored glasses rolled into powder glasses, and that gives me a variety of shades. Here I'm focusing on the blossom. I'm taking the lip of the blossom and sealing sepals and petals onto the lip. And by heating the petals and shaping it, I'm developing a Paphiopedilum orchid. Once I have the blossom finished, I put it in an annealing oven and anneal it at 975 Fahrenheit so that it becomes stable. When I flame worked all the components, I bring them to the hot plate on my bench, and by keeping it hot with a Bunsen burner underneath, I attach the botanical components into the design. Once the components are finished into a design, I bring it to a pickup oven where it is going to be encapsulated in clear glass. My assistant is preheating clear glass to be dropped onto the colored glass design and encapsulate the orchids. We repeat the process with two halves sealed together and shaping it into the final orb. In the studio, I take advantage of two heat sources, the glory hole and the gas oxygen bench burner. The heat involved is upwards of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, shaping the glass into a sphere. By putting two halves together, I'm able to suggest the design is 360 degrees. Magnification plays an important role in the presentation of the design. Once the orb is shaped, it goes into the oven to anneal for 40 hours. Once the glass is annealed, it's then ground and polished to be finished.
So those are the pieces that are out in the hallway. That's a kind of a process video of how the artist made those. Yeah, what's your question?
Do you have to cool down glass before you bake it?
When the glass is hot, if you don't cool it down, it breaks. So if you want to do anything to it after you've worked with it hot, you do have to cool it down. So everything they make in here has to go through that oven, cool down slowly, or it breaks. Like that piece over there they were working on, that bit of glass down there on the ground already cracked and has a bunch of cracks in it now. Yeah, what's your question? Ours what? Sorry.
Are those like the splotches on
Oh, the pieces on the floor. Yeah, that's water. There's water on the ground. We also use beeswax on some of the tools, so like the black splotches on the ground could be pieces of beeswax that dripped onto the ground. What's your question? I didn't see what happened. Sorry, say that again? Oh, if you tap on the rod to get glass off the pipe, you tap on the rod, the vibrations go through the rod and into the glass and break it. So he was breaking the piece off the rod. And then sometimes the heat makes the metal stick together, so you tap on it and it separates. So he's getting those all set up to do the next thing. He's going to squish glass on top of them to make a design. So he's setting them up the way he wants them to be. What's your question? The glass on the ground there? Yeah, that's clear glass, so it can get put back in the furnace. But they won't do that till the end of the day. So at the end of the day, you do what's called charging, and that's refilling the bowl that holds all the molten glass inside. So at the end of the day, they can throw all the clear glass back in the furnace, and it'll remelt, and they can use it tomorrow. But it needs time to melt, so they'll let it melt overnight. Yeah. If it's clear glass, you can recycle it, but if it has color, then you can't put it back in there. So they're using clear glass to practice making these pieces so that they don't waste the color. But once they kind of nail it down and get the design they want, they'll start putting color in there. Yeah. Yeah. What's your question? I think they've made like 3 so far, just trying stuff out. That was one of them. But you can see they're all down there talking to each other about the process and what they want to try next and seeing what works and what doesn't. Yeah, it's a lot of experimentation, a lot of trial and error. Yeah. If all the ovens break, then we can't blow glass. That wouldn't be good. We have like backup generators in case they break. What's that? This studio is, today we just have the team in here making things, but usually there's residencies, artists come in here and they use the facility to make their work and they use the team to help them. People can rent it too, but they do a lot of artist residencies. There was one last week where a guy made a bunch of stuff. They're making art for the museum. These things they're making they're like awards for a fundraiser that the museum does every year called Breakfast at the Cone. And they're making these awards for that event. Yeah. The people out here, like Gabe works here full time. Ben is the studio manager. And so most of them are here every day blowing glass or working with a resident artist making their work. Because glass blowing is, you can't do it really by yourself, so you have to have a team. So the resident artists will come in here and get to use the team and the facility to make their stuff. Yeah. And it's here so you guys can see live glass blowing. So they're taking a quick break to try to reassess, reset, and try again. They'll get started again soon. I don't know, probably to the bathroom or something. They're taking a quick little break. They'll start up again in just a minute. Yeah. Yeah, what's your question? Thank you. Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your time here. Go explore some stuff. Bye. For those of you that are still in here with us, what they're doing right now is making what's called a stuff cup. So we're practicing the shape that we wanted to make earlier, and they're getting the color prepped for the pieces when we start making them. So a stuff cup, they get the color and they lay it over a bubble of clear glass. They gather clear glass over it and they blow it out into what looks like a cup. They're gonna fill that cup with clear glass, and it's called a stuff cup because you take the clear glass and you stuff it into the cup to fill the cup with clear glass. So the color will be on the outside and it'll be full of clear glass, and that'll just make it the right size so we can make the sculptures that they're practicing right now. So they're getting a bunch of stuff cups ready for later. They're gonna put all the stuff cups in our garage, and the garage just keeps all the pieces hot. They sit at about 1,000 degrees in there, so that's hot enough that it's not gonna break from getting too cold, but it's cold enough that it's not gonna slump or change shape. It's just gonna sit in that box at that temperature. So it just holds the pieces until we're ready to use them. So they're making all the prep work right now, and then later in the day, they'll start using them to make the pieces. With glass blowing, there can be a lot of prep work involved. So that's what they're doing right now. I'm not sure what color it is because all the colors look orange when they're hot. So it looks orange, but I think it's like a green or a blue. Yeah. Ben just got fresh glass out of the furnace. The furnace is where all the clear glass is. The furnace melts the glass for us, and we scoop it out the same way you'd get honey out of a jar with a stick. So they scoop out a little bit at a time. Glass blowing's a layering process, really, because you can only get so much out at a time from how hot it is. He scooped out a little bit. He might go back in and get a little bit more once this cools down more. Cold is a relative term in glass blowing. So when I say cold, I just mean not molten. So 1,000 degrees is cold. But to use the stuff cup, Ben is going to build up that clear glass on the end of the solid rod so that it's enough glass to stuff into the cup that Alex is making over here at the bench. There can be a lot of moving parts in glass blowing, so that's why you need a team. Hello. If you guys have any questions, just let me know. Right now they're working on making some awards that are going to be used at one of the fundraisers for the museum, Breakfast at the Cone. So they've got multiple moving parts that will be all put together eventually to make these sculptures. Over there, on that side of the stage, they're making what's called a stuff cup. It's a cup that will get clear glass and stuff into it. So it's a way to add color on the outside of a piece. And Ben over here is going into the furnace to get another layer of clear glass. Our furnace there has a big bowl in it that holds all the molten glass inside. It sits at about 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit inside, and that keeps the glass molten. That's clear glass. It just looks orange because of how hot it is. But he's got a fresh layer of clear glass. He's going to let that cool and then go back in and get another layer until we have enough clear glass to stuff into the cup that they're making on that side of the studio. The reason they're doing it this way is because we want it to have a solid color. So they're making the layer of solid color on the cup, and then they'll fill it with clear glass and then create the sculpture from that. We've also got, in addition to the furnaces, we have what are called reheating chambers or glory holes. They're big barrels of fire, and they're about 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. They're used to reheat the glass. So when you take it out of the furnace, it starts to get cold. The colder it gets, the stiffer it is. So we have to reheat it inside those big barrels to get the glass molten and hot again, so it's easier to shape. So they'll be going into those big barrels to heat up the glass as they're working on it. If the glass gets too cold, it breaks. So they have to maintain a certain temperature so the glass doesn't break. And a lot of glass blowing is just temperature and timing. So they're lining up their temperature and timing during this process so that we can eventually put these two pieces together. So there can be a lot of moving parts when you're making something more intricate. That's why there's usually a team of people when you're blowing glass. Ben is just waiting for this to get colder. He wants it to be pretty cold so he can go back in the furnace and get more glass on top of it. And when I say cold, I just mean not molten. So 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit is cold for glass blowing. Ben just did what's called stripping. So he's stripping off a bunch of the clear glass. When you have that fresh layer of molten glass, if you hold it straight up and down, it's going to drip off the pipe. So he got more than he needed. He stripped clear glass into that bin over there, and all the clear glass in that bin can get put back in the furnace later. We can reuse it. If it's clear glass, you can throw it back in the furnace. If it has color, you can't. So we have this bucket specifically for clear glass so that we can reuse it, just wasting less material. But now they're getting ready to do the stuff cup. If you can see on the screen, Ben's gonna get this bit of glass hot enough that he can stuff it into that cup, and it will fill the inside. So filling the clear into that cup that has the color. And now the color will be on the outside, and the piece will be solid clear glass on the inside. Now the stuff cup is on Ben's rod on the outside. So the same way he built up the clear in layers, you can add the color in layers. So they added that layer on the outside for the color. And now they can work on the shape of the sculpture they're making and finish off the piece. While they're doing that, we're just going to get another stuff cup ready for the next one. So that stuff cup was attached to another rod before they stuffed it. So there's a little bit of clear glass on the bottom from where they removed it from the other rod. They're just getting that nice and hot so they can pull it off, because we don't want that little bit of glass on there. So we got it really hot, and he's just trying to pull that clear glass off the bottom. We've got different types of torches over here. The one that's on right now is called the fluffy torch, because the flame is fluffy. It's used to heat up the glass that's closer to the pipe, because that part gets colder faster. And the other torch was a smaller flame, and it's more geared specifically towards things like this. You can get one specific part really hot and then change the shape or take a piece off. And those two torches are run on propane and oxygen. The rest of the bigger equipment is natural gas, excuse me, natural gas and forced air. So since this is all solid glass, it takes a lot longer to heat up. So the process for the rest of this will be a little bit slower, just because the solid glass takes a lot longer to get hot. As opposed to when you're blowing glass, the piece is hollow, so it's not as thick. It heats up faster if it's thinner. So these heats will probably last a while, just because there's so much glass to heat up. All of our tools are on the table next to the bench. Alex is getting the tools ready for Ben, so when he sits down, he can just grab the ones he needs. One of those tools is newspaper folded up and soaked in water. If it's wet, it creates steam when it touches the glass. So you can actually shape glass, molten hot glass, with a pad of wet newspaper. So he's going to use that to shape it a little bit. We also have metal tools and wooden tools. But you'll be able to see the steam coming off the paper. That's really what's shaping the glass. There's a thin layer of steam in between the paper and the glass. And that's how it's not getting hot in his hand. If the paper got too dry, then it would start to burn and get hot in his hand. But we soak it in water, so it's a nice wet pad of paper. So we're starting to shape up this solid blob of glass into more of the shape that he's going for. He's slowly moving it with that paper and shaping the outside. The glass on the inside needs to be hot enough to be able to change it. So that's why he was in the fire for so long, because we have to get the core of it all hot again too. And all of the colors, no matter what the color actually is, when it's really hot, it's all gonna look orange. So I'm not sure what color this actually is gonna be. I didn't see what it was before they started. So I'm gonna guess that it's like a green or a blue. I think that's what they're using. There's a glass blowing school up in Stanwood, Washington. It's not super close to here, but it's north of Everett. Pilchuck Glass School was established by Chihuly, who was born in Tacoma. So that's one of the closer schools you can go to. It's not really like it's not like a college or anything. It's like a school you can go to for 2 or 3 weeks in the summer to focus on glass blowing. But you can go to college for glass blowing. You can learn how to blow glass in school. The residencies, there's an application process. So if you're an artist that wants to do a residency here, you submit an application and you tell them like your artist statement, about the artist. You send them images of your work, and they look through the applications and they pick the people they want to come do a residency. Yeah. But for the residencies, the artist gets to come in here and work with this team. And the whole team's not here today. There's a handful of other people that would be here helping. And the scale of things you can make here, because of the equipment they have, you can make large scale things. So people often will come here to make big bodies of work, lots of pieces all for a show or something. I don't think he's worked here directly, but we've got Chihuly pieces in the galleries. Normally the galleries are under construction to be made into brand new, really nice galleries. So the galleries are closed right now because they're under construction, but there's Chihuly work in the galleries normally when they're not closed. If you've been on the bridge, there's big Chihuly pieces up on the bridge too. Yeah. Yeah, Dale Chihuly was born in Tacoma. Yeah. A lot of people think because of his last name that he's not from the United States, but he was born here. Yeah. The way he lost his eye is kind of ironic. It is from glass, but it's not from glass blowing. He got in a car wreck and a glass shrapnel got in his eye. So it was glass, but it wasn't from this. Yeah. So for the shape we're working on for this piece, they're trying to make it kind of more like a saucer, like a little patty sausage shape. And then we have some texture things on the table. They're going to push the glass onto it, and it'll stamp a pattern on the piece. But we're working on getting that shape right now. So he's getting it really hot. He'll sit at the bench, and they'll shape it till it gets too cold, and then he's got to repeat that process. Getting up, heating it up, sitting down till it gets too cold, back and forth. Most of the tools we use are metal or wood. So Gabe in the black hat, he's got a dry wood paddle, and Ben has a pair of jacks, which is a metal tool, and they're using those both at the same time to shape this piece and create some edges. The dry wood paddle catches on fire because it is just wood, but it's made of a fruit tree wood, which is really dense, and it lasts a long time. Those do eventually burn out. You just get new ones. So. Yeah. Yeah, you can also use those to smack your assistant if they do the wrong thing. But these three guys are all kind of working in unison to make this shape happen. Glass blowing is really like a team sport. You're really limited to what you could do by yourself. Even if you're like a master glass blower, there's things you just can't do by yourself. So having a team is essential. The next step for this piece, once they have it in the right shape, they're going to get the surface of it where he's flattening it. They're going to get that really hot. And we have some stuff over here. These little rings right here. They're going to take that and they're just going to stuff it on there, and it's going to stamp the pattern of these rings. So these little pieces are going to be awards. So these guys, Gabe and Ben work here full time. Ben is the studio manager, and Gabe is one of the glass blowers that's here all the time. So their job is here, working here, and when there's residencies, they're the team that help the artist make their work. So this is like a full-time job for them. There's different roads you can take if you're a glass artist. You could become like a studio artist. You could be a teacher. You could work in a studio like this. Yeah, there's a couple different avenues you could take depending on what you want to do. Sorry. The material that the table is made of, it's a steel top table. It's called a marver, M-A-R-V-E-R. Yeah, but it's a steel top table. I don't think so. He just covered it up. He could. I don't know why he didn't. Well, hello. What grade are you guys in? Third grade? What school? Okay, cool. You guys here on a field trip today learning about some glass? What do you think? Awesome. Well, we're not blowing glass today. We're doing sculptures. So we've got a solid piece here. They're making a sculpture. Does anyone want to guess how hot the glass is in the furnace? What do you think? Close. Yeah. Over 2,000 was the guess, and that's close. Who's guessing next? What do you think? Yeah, what do you think? 2,100 million degrees. That's a little hot. Not quite. What do you think? What's that? A little hotter than 300. What do you think? He just said 300. It's 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. You were very close. You're 200 degrees off. Our furnace is this the big box over here, the big silver thing. Can we get the furnace diagram up on the screen, please? So that's what the furnace looks like on the inside. It runs on natural gas and forced air. The glass sits in a big bowl. It holds about 1,000 pounds of glass in there. So inside the furnace looks like a giant salad bowl full of honey, but it's a furnace full of glass. You scoop it out the same way you get honey out of a jar. So we take the sticks, put them inside the door. You scoop the glass out by wrapping it around the end of the stick. Like that. So these guys have built up a bunch of clear glass. They added some color to it, and now they're going to stamp a texture on it to make some sculptures. So there's a big event that happens here every year called Breakfast at the Cone. It's a fundraiser, and they're making some awards that will be presented at the fundraiser. So they're making the awards right now, today. Earlier today, they were doing more experimental work on the design. So now they've kind of honed in on their design. They're starting to make the sculptures. So the fire, Ben here is holding the glass on the end of a stick inside this big barrel of fire. That's our reheating chamber, or the glory hole. Can we see the diagram of that up on the screen? That's our reheating chamber, also called the glory hole. It's powered by natural gas and forced air as well, and it's used to reheat the glass. Its temperature is around 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's around the same temperature as the furnace, but just slightly hotter. If the glass gets too cold, it will crack, so we have to make sure we keep it hot. That's why we're using the reheating chamber to heat the glass back up. Yeah. Do you guys have any questions so far? What's your question? This is where they make a lot of work of glass, but there's other studios around that you can make work into. So not everything you've seen made of glass is made here, but a lot of the stuff you've seen in the museum is made here. Yeah. They don't use gloves because the gloves kind of get in the way. It would be like trying to play guitar with gloves on. They would kind of help, but not really. They wear safety protection gear like eyeglasses, but they need the dexterity and the movement of their hands to be able to shape the glass. Yeah, what's your question? How much glass they use depends on what they're making. Today they're making solid sculptures, so they'll use more glass than if they were blowing the glass out. It just depends on what they're making, how much they'll use. Yeah, what's your question? We have a gift shop here that they sell some of the stuff that they make, yeah. Yeah, what's your question? They're making awards to present to people at the Breakfast at the Cone event. I'm not quite sure what the finished product is going to look like. Being honest, I don't know. Let me get some questions from over here. Yeah, what's your question? What's that? The furnace that melts the glass stays on all the time. The reheating chambers get turned on and off, but the furnaces stay on all the time. Because when we're working with the glass, it needs to stay molten. And then when they're not here, they need to melt more glass. So when we're not here, they do what's called charging, which is filling the glass up, or filling the furnace up with more glass. It melts overnight, and then when they come in the next day, they have glass to work with. So the furnaces are on all the time. Yeah. What was your question? Okay. The big black box?
No, the little things on top of the box.
Oh, those are little pieces of glass.
Also, why is there so much metal here?
So much what?
Metal.
They use a lot of metal to shape the glass because the metal's melting temperature is higher than the glass. So they need something to be able to work with the glass on that can withstand that temperature. So that's why they use a lot of metal tools, metal things. The metal melts at a much higher temperature than glass, so we can use it. It doesn't melt. What's your question?
What happens if you make it a little too hot?
The hotter the glass is, the more it's going to move. So if you get it really hot and you can't control it, it'll fall off the stick. If you make the glass 4,000 degrees, that's going to be way too hot, and it's going to be like soup. If the glass gets under like 800 degrees, it'll crack. So when I say the glass is cold, I just mean it's around 1,000 degrees. If it gets too much colder, it breaks from thermal shock, because glass doesn't like to change temperature too quickly. If you touch the glass, it will burn you, because it's hot. Yeah. Up there is just more displays of other pieces that have been made, other glass pieces. You can walk up there, around there, and see them later if your group goes up there. There's more glass to look at. Yeah, what's your question? That's called a fluffy torch because the flame is fluffy. It's used to reheat the glass that's closest to the metal because the metal will take a lot of the heat out of the glass. So that reheats the glass that's on the metal or close to it. Yeah. Plus the glass off the end of the stick is the first thing to go in the fire and the last thing to come out, so it's a lot hotter anyway. So they use the torch to reheat the part closer to the metal. And then this torch is one they're using that's a lot hotter than the fluffy torch. The fluffy torch is around 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit, and the torch they're using right now is more like 4,000 degrees. It's a lot hotter. It's going to melt the glass fast so they can pull that end part off. Yeah, what's your question? They built this shaped like the cone because it has to do with the history of Tacoma. Yeah. That's just the design of the piece. They want it to be a circle. And you've been waiting forever. I'm so sorry. What's your question? So if the glass gets too cold, they can't work with it. So that's why we have to work with it at these temperatures. If it gets too cold, it's solid, stiff, not hot enough to move around. And the water, like for drinking, or the water for working with the glass? We got these big buckets that are full of water, and they have tools inside them. And then on the sides of the studios, we have fountains that have water in them. Those are used to cool the pipes so that you can hold them up higher. Yeah. It smells like food because there's a place where they make food outside. Right out there. What's your question? If glass is hot and you touch it to other glass, they stick together. So hot glass will stick to other hot glass. If it touches the metal, it won't really stick, but it can temporarily. If the metal gets hot, it sticks to glass, but the glass doesn't really fuse to it. It just sticks from the heat. Yeah. The difference between those three things is what they're made of. So the chemical makeup of glass is soda ash, silica, and limestone, and that's what allows us to work with it. I'm going to go get some of the questions on this side. Yeah, what's your question? What's up? Oh, okay. What's your question? The glass sits in the furnace at about 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's anywhere between 1,000 and 2,000 while we're working on it. If it gets much colder, it breaks. So he's actually creating that design on the piece right now. They're pushing it onto these little rings that are on the table. It's stamped that pattern. Now you can see that nice texture on there. Yeah. What's your question? Okay. It's molten glass. It looks like lava, but it's molten clear glass. Glass is made of soda ash and silica and limestone. Lava is molten rock, so it's a different chemical makeup. Yeah. What's your question? They don't burn themselves by working very carefully. Every now and then, it's like working in the kitchen. Sometimes you burn yourself on accident, but they don't do it on purpose. They're working with hot stuff, so sometimes it happens, but they just have burn cream. What's your question? They're making sculptures that are going to be presented as awards at one of the fundraisers that's coming up called Breakfast at the Cone. So they're creating these sculptures that will be presented to people as awards during the fundraiser event. Thank you. So I think they're just about done with this piece. They've got to take it off of the pipe and put it into what's called the annealing oven, which is this big black box over there. If the glass cools too quickly, it'll break. So we have to cool it in a controlled environment. The inside of the annealer is about 950 degrees Fahrenheit. So it'll sit in there and it'll cool down slowly over time. What's your question? If it breaks, they gotta try again. Yeah, if the glass breaks, they gotta start over and try again. Yeah. The colors look kind of weird whenever the glass is hot, so it looks green, but I think this might end up being blue. It's like when you take the clear glass out of the furnace, it's glowing orange. That's just because of the temperature. But this piece is about 1,000 degrees right now, so even the color at 1,000 degrees can look a little funky. Yeah. What's your question? Yeah, once the glass is cold, you can take it out and paint on top of it. Yeah. Let me answer some of the questions over here, but what's your question?
What was the biggest glass sculpture that was ever made?
The biggest glass sculpture ever made? I'm not sure. I'm not sure the biggest one ever made, how big that is. Probably a little bit bigger than me. Yeah, what's your question? Were you raising your hand? He's going to break it off of the pipe where it's attached. So the temperature and timing are important. They're lining up the temperature so that when you put water on glass, if it's too cold, it cracks. So they're going to crack that part that's attached to the pipe and break it off to remove the piece from the pipe. So yeah, all about that temperature and what the temperature is and the timing to make all these things work. You've been raising your hand for a while. Yeah, what's your question? Inside that, it's just a big barrel of fire. So there's fire blowing into it to keep the inside hot. I know that the clear molten glass looks like lava because it's orange, but it is glass. Yeah, what's your question?
Why are colors like glass? Why are colors different from what we see? Like, for example, if we put in blue,
It looks like a different color just because of the temperature. So all the colors look a little bit different when they're hot. When the glass cools, the color it's supposed to be will come out, but when it's hot, it glows. So it looks orange right now, but that's just because it's 2,000 degrees. As it cools, the color it's supposed to be will come out. So it's not like changing color. The color's just hiding inside the heat. I think this is going to end up being blue, but it looks orange just because it's really hot. What's your question? If you get the glass really hot, then it gets so hot that you can't control it. If it were 30 or 40,000 degrees, it would melt the furnace. That'd be way too hot. Yeah. What's that?
Can you ask them what they're making?
They're making a sculpture. It's going to be an award that's presented at one of the fundraisers. So it's just a little sculpture that they're going to present as an award. They're not blowing the glass right now. They're really sculpting solid glass at the moment. They might do glass blowing later in the day, but right now they're working on solid things. Yeah. They can make really big work here because of the size of all the equipment. I'm not sure what the biggest thing they've ever made is. Smallest thing is probably like a cup, a little cup. Yeah. Let me get some questions over here. Yeah. What's your question?
How do they take it off
To take it off the stick, they have to have the right temperature of the glass. At the right temperature, when you put water on it, it creates a crack. So they'll crack it in a specific spot and then break it off the pipe by tapping on the pipe. It'll send vibrations into the weak spot and break it. So they'll break it off the pipe, but then they'll clean up the spot where it broke to kind of hide where it broke. Yeah, what's your question?
What kind of sculpture is it
I don't think it's going to be a specific, like, recognizable item. It's a sculpture, like an abstract sculpture that's going to be presented as an award. Yeah. They might make a bowl later today, but I don't know when. They might do it after lunch. Yeah, what's your question?
What kind of design do
They make all kinds of stuff here. They'll have visiting artists come in that make really big sculptures or really big blown objects. It just depends on who's in here, what they're making that day. Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes does the glass that they're making caught on fire?
The temperatures we're working at, a lot of the tools will catch on fire, but the glass itself isn't catching on fire.
How does it not break when they make the glass on fire?
If the glass gets too cold, it will break. These guys have just been blowing glass for a long time, so they know the temperatures to work in. If it gets too cold, though, it will break. Yeah, what's your question? If you pour a bunch of water inside the furnace, it would evaporate because the furnace is so hot. Yeah. If you have it in the furnace and you pour water on it, it's so hot in the furnace that the water will just evaporate and it'll keep the glass molten. But if you pour water on this piece right now, it would crack because of the temperature of the glass. It's not as hot here as it is in the furnace. Yeah. What's your question? I think they've made a couple of these today. It's kind of a long process because it's solid. So they've made a couple of these today. They make all kinds of different stuff in here. Depends on who's in here working. They make all kinds of sculptures and functional pieces. Yeah. What's your question? What's that? It just looks green because of its temperature. This piece will be blue when it cools down. But it's still about 1,000 degrees right now. So the colors look different when it's hot. Yeah, what's your question?
Did they make that?
Somebody made this cup, yeah. I don't know who made it, but somebody in here made this. Yeah, what's your question? They use chalk to draw on the ground so that they can kind of plan the shape that they want to make. Sometimes having a visual helps. Yeah. What's your question? The color, yeah, that's a good question. So how do we get the color in the glass? Really, it's a chemist that does that. There's glass chemists that mix different metal oxides into clear glass, and it makes a color. So if you wanted blue, you could take cobalt oxide and add it to glass, and it makes it blue. If you wanted red, you could put copper in it, and it would make red. So chemists make it for us, and then we go buy it at the glass store. Green comes from different kinds of rust, I think. I don't know exactly. I don't know what metal makes all of the colors. I just had a few examples. Yeah, it's metal oxides. What's your question? When the glass is hot, you sculpt it. You can change the shape when the glass is hot and move it around with some tools. That's what they're doing here. They're using a bunch of different metal tools. But right now, they're going to take it off the pipe and put it into the annealing oven so it can cool down slowly. What's your question? Yeah. Yeah, there's other glass blowers that work here too. They're just not all here today. Let's give them a big hand for the nice little piece they just made. So that piece is going to sit in the annealing oven so it can cool down slowly. We'll take that out probably sometime tomorrow, and it'll be cold enough to touch. Yeah, what's your question? Those are for a different day. They were trying to keep track of how many pieces they made. How's what? What is this place? I don't know. Long time ago. Yeah, what's your question? So they just finished that piece. They're going to reset and start working on something else. I'm not sure what they're going to do. I think they want to make another one of those pieces. So they're going to start from the beginning and do it all again. Yeah.
What's that thing over there? With the little
The big silver box. The big silver box right there.
no.
Behind it.
The one with the little handle.
Oh, that's the furnace. The one with the handle is the furnace. That's where all the clear molten glass is sitting inside. Yeah, what's your question? That gray box is called the garage. So if you're making a sculpture and it has multiple parts, you can make the parts and park them in the garage while you're making other parts. And it keeps them hot so that you can put them together later. So they've got a couple things in the garage right now while they're working on something else. Yeah. So I think they're going to start back up and make another one from the beginning. Yeah, what's your question? Of what? No. So the pieces out in the grand hall that you saw earlier, those sculptures that look like big balls that have stuff inside of them, the artist that made those name is Paul Stankard. Oh. Thanks for joining us. See you later.